How's it, guys? It's Brandon Fairweather from Biogen. We're here in the Biogen pop-up store in the beautiful Decathlon Sports Hub retail outlet in Nickelway in Bryanston. We've got a great privilege today in having a discussion, and a very interesting discussion with some really special people. On my left here is Wayne Taylor, Joshua Capizorio, and Rudy from the Biogen team as well. And we're going to get straight into a really interesting topic. And I think, one of the things we wanted to discuss today was performance at all costs. And before we get into that, I thought let me just give each person on our panel, in our group, a chance to just tell you who they are and why they're here, and then we'll get straight into it.
Yeah, I'm Wayne Taylor. Most people call me Tails. Run my own company, WT Human Performance. Have a pretty strong background in professional rugby, but now work with a wide range of individual athletes and clients wanting to be at their best.
Cool. It was short and sweet. No, it was just short and sweet. I was actually listening quite intensely there. Josh Capizorio, I'm head coach and strength and conditioning coach and co-owner of Performance Purist, which is also based here at the Sports Hub. And I've also got an array of athletes, been very fortunate to work track and field, you name it, sprinters, fighters, boxers, swimmers, rugby players, soccer players, the whole suit, but also moms, dads, and everyone else in between, and tying in the ethos of people wanting to better themselves. So that's pretty much where I found my niche, not just as a strength and conditioning coach, but helping people find that ethos on being better, regardless of the background, regardless of the history behind training. Just pretty much starting them from scratch, and love what I do, man.
Cool. Geez, it's a tough one. Yeah, I feel like I need to put on my big boy pants. But yeah, Rudy Malbier, Biogen ambassador and athlete, bodybuilder, classic physique competitor, dad as well. I think that we need to add that to the table. Yeah, very proud of that. But yeah, it's just an interesting topic today in performance at all costs, and what that means for everyone really, as a professional, as someone who gets to the gym 5 times a week, 3 times a week, or there's so many things that you could classify as an athlete, and who is an athlete, and what that all means. So yeah, it's very interesting to sort of dig into this topic today, and keen to get everyone's insight on that.
I think the basis of the discussion, and you might ask why we're doing this today, I think given the COVID pandemic, it's just brought an awareness to people pushing their bodies to new limits, and I suppose just the trauma that everybody's experienced around this. I think we've seen, even in our industry and even people close to our business or our family, people who've battled or suffered with COVID, and just some people, the longer term effects of that on your physical performance, not just in a sporting or a training environment, but just even your own personal life at work. And it's kind of just spurred on this thought of people pushing their bodies. I wouldn't say unnecessarily, and we'll speak about professional athletes and people who rely on sport or fitness for their earnings and for their career. But it just sparked this thought of, guys, like the first thing I thought of is people who've experienced COVID, and this is just one example of the pandemic because it's topical, was just like people are getting back out there too soon, in my view. I think it's, they're rushing back to get back into a routine, and not everybody's aware, as is the case. A lot of people are still figuring out what this whole sort of virus means to you. But I think it also just spurred on other thoughts and discussions amongst a few of us, around just general training. And Josh and I have had many discussions around chatting about businessmen or family men, and just keeping that work-life balance and that training balance, and when do you find time. I personally, working hard, find it difficult to keep that balance, and often if I have to choose, training takes the back seat because of my priority set. But for someone who's more reliant on their training, whether they are a model or a sports person or a fitness athlete or a professional athlete, it's not really a choice. And I suppose we just wanted to unpack that theme of performance at all costs, what people are willing to do and who should be pushing themselves to those limits, and understanding your limits. So just to kick off, maybe just a quick 1 or 2 liner, you can go longer than that if you want. Guys, what does performance at all costs mean to you, and what have you seen in your own space with your athletes? Let's maybe give the others a chance, and Rudy will kick off with you. What does performance at all costs mean to you?
Look, I think it's relative to everyone, and it does mean different things to anyone who has to answer this, basically. But performance at all costs, to me, I would say, is all about pushing myself on a daily basis to be my best. I know that's what we stand for at Biogen, but ultimately that's all it is on every day, is what am I going to eat today? What is that going to add value to what I'm trying to achieve, to my goals? whether I get to training or not. Am I spending enough time with my family? Is there enough balance in my life? Essentially, performance at all costs is all about what you're willing to give up versus what you want to achieve to do so. No, Josh, what do you think?
I'll go a little bit deeper with performance at all cost. For me, it's actually about the intricacies behind human behavior. I think it's very subjective when people start worrying about performance as a dietary requirement, as a training plan, as an exercise. I see it quite simply as the behavior that people create and what they're willing to subject where. So some people are willing to forfeit training, but they don't mind having a few more drinks every night with their friends and say, work's hectic. Or, they say, family's important, family time, but it's actually just an easy cop-out. And not because family time doesn't take from you. I mean, you mentioned father, also father, you got roles and responsibilities, I understand that. But I think some people, the performance at all costs is so subjective towards the context of the environment at the stage you are in your life.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I see it deeper than just a training plan or deeper than just a phase, because I think people aren't willing to address it when it changes its form and it becomes very subtle. It's easy when it's a training plan. Yeah. So, when Rudy's prepping for a show, it's very easy to say, it's performance, it's what he's focusing on. It's very easy to point that out. But if he's on a work project and that's actually consuming his time, it's taking him away from his wife, it's taking him away from the kids, it's taking him away from training. It's the same thing. Yeah. But people don't see the side effect of overtraining through overworking, because overworking is normal because you get paid for it. So, without going too deep down and to keep it in my two-liner that you offered me, that's how I see performance at all cost. If I can just bottle that.
Yeah. Tells you've worked with professional sports teams and rugby teams in particular in New Zealand, in South Africa, all over the world. I mean, what are some of the examples of performance at all costs that you've seen and the lengths that guys are willing to go to win?
Yeah, look, I think I'm doing a lot of presenting with corporates as well around creating success, and it's the synergy between how we create success in sport and transferring that into life and into business as well. And we talk in professional sport, the funny thing about little things is there are no little things. So it can be simply going to, and you don't understand this really, going to a rugby match and forgetting your gum guard is a little thing, but then you can't take the field, it's a big thing. So, you've got to dot your I's and cross the T's and things. But then at the other end of the scale as well, I ask corporates as an example, and we're talking to the general public. Have you ever looked at when you're at your best? And that can be you had an amazing day at work. Did you ever analyse why it was such a good day? Did you look at your sleep patterns, the quality of your sleep, maybe your hydration, what you did to put you at your best? And we don't have that luxury in professional sport where we don't just turn up on a Saturday and play and go, that didn't go so well, We have to have a recipe for success, and we try to get all of the guys to look at their performance and what works for them. And it can come down to, in corporate or even in our, the Lions as an example in Joburg, traffic's a hassle. So we adjusted our trainings around when we were there to make sure that the guys weren't sitting in traffic. It's counterproductive to recovery, sitting in the car. And then also it's stealing time away from their families. Didn't keep them in to do pool recovery, rather get them back to their families and then hopefully take their kids to a Virgin Active and do their recovery. So it's just the balance that Josh is talking about is critical, because if they don't get home to put their kids to bed, they're not a complete person, because something's missing that's critical, that's very important to them, spiritually as well. So, we have to take all those things into account, and that's where I think Josh has hit it on the head with the article.
You spoke about those days where you feel like everything's just gone well. I think one of the key factors is whether the Springboks won on the previous weekend, for us anyway. For Tails will be the All Blacks, which is probably more often than not, so that's a bit easier.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about that.
No, exactly.
You're the world champions right there. Don't try and downplay it.
He just has to watch how he says it in SA. That's all he's got to worry about. Where he's cheering for. He's got to watch it at home.
I justify it by saying I'm 100% supporter of the Springboks unless they're playing the All Blacks.
Fair enough. Very diplomatic answer.
There we go.
I'm going to do a horrible misquote of what the study was. I attended a talk once with Discovery, and they had one of the former doctors or coaches or one of the staff of the Springboks there, and they were just talking about doping in sport, actually. And we're not going to focus too much on that because we could go all day about that contentious issue. But again, demonstrating that psychology of doing whatever it takes to win. And we've seen it in athletes that retire at the end of careers, the mental slump they go through. Michael Phelps, it's very well known that he's gone through a really difficult spell after winning gold, and many athletes go through this. Athletes coming to the end of their career. But one of the things they mentioned that thing was they asked a big group, and again, this was a really poor misquote of the example, but they did a study of how many people would be willing, if they had to do whatever it took, doping, cheating, whatever, to get a gold medal, but they would die the following year. I think there was an overwhelming response, and I can't remember the number, but it was way more than 50-60% of athletes were like, I would do it. That's how badly they want gold. But tell us a little bit about that psychology.
Well, what I was going to do is I'm going to throw a curveball there. Okay, but now let's do the same test, and we say, okay, cool. For a billion rand, a number most people can't fathom. Would you take a billion rand, but a year later, you wouldn't be around? Would you take it, yes or no? I can guarantee you that will almost be a 98%. Yeah. And I say that because the context matters. So the reason why you'll see with performance at all costs, I actually don't just strictly talk about training. Because where I'm going with this is that more people would probably sacrifice for a billion rand than an Olympic medal. Because there's very few people, and like Wayne, I'll definitely know those people, that actually grasp what an Olympian is. A lot of people can talk about it, they see the rings, they've watched it before, they know Michael Phelps. When you spend time with actual Olympians, you understand how they are such anomalies. Absolute anomalies. However, the one thing we can all agree with, a billion rand would be really good for us. Because we think about our families, we think about the generation behind. You just think about all of that, right? So where I'm going with that to me is performance at all costs. It's the context of what people are willing to sacrifice for their own health, for their own goodness. And that's why I wouldn't just highlight it on training. I personally don't think people train hard enough for actually ever be a negative. We do not. We don't have the stats to prove that people are that active. We have people that are so inactive that the moment they go back into activity, they actually get hurt. And then they try to blame it on activity. It's not the case. So the performance at all costs for me factor when it comes down to what people are willing to sacrifice. People will sacrifice their health negatively over and positively like an Olympian would choose, right? And that's pretty much to me why in the article I pretty much, and we'll brush on those steps a little bit later, but how people should be approaching this, because priorities matter, because context matters. And I find the most condescending thing you can ever do to someone is disregard the context that matters to them. Because to an Olympian, that's as much of an important role as a CEO. There's no difference. One just gets to be on TV about it and get some sponsorships. But he gets no attention for 3 years before that, we all know this, okay? But there's no difference in their head and their world. So, you can't now disregard the one for the other, because that CEO is willing to sacrifice his family, he's willing to sacrifice his friendships, he's willing to sacrifice a lot because he wants that role and responsibility. So does an athlete. So the performance at all costs is pretty much getting people to a state, for me, to identify what are those things in your life. And the problem is a lot of people aren't honest enough. Some people will say it up front, no, family time. Okay, but are you just saying that out of habit because you always think your wife's next to you? Or are you saying that because that's actually, guys will say, well, what are you doing on Saturday? And they look around first. Right?
Checking the door.
They've got to play it safe. But you've got to ask what the real priority is. And a lot of people don't have that conversation up front. And then what happens is, and this is what you have when I deal with a lot of people, the result that they're getting doesn't match the positioning of the intent of what they're trying to focus on. So if training is the last priority in their life, which is okay, remember that is okay, you're not a bad person if that's the case. The problem is that they want the result of someone that puts it as number one. Like Rudy, who will put training not above his family. I can tell it's family, it's training, it's work. I can already just spending a bit of time.
I want to put work up there too.
He'd like to, but he's at a stage in his life right now. But let's be honest, he's at a stage in his life right now where he's putting his physique quite up there. It's like on the threshold. Now, someone else might be behind that, but then they'll look at a Rudy. And this is where the whole thing comes into play. A guy will look at Rudy, look at his physique, look at his, wow. But their priority of training is down here, where Rudy's is higher. Okay? They're willing to put so many other things above that. But yet they'll still put their subjective view on Rudy's results and not theirs. And then that leads back to what you're tying in with COVID, on guys going extreme out of nowhere, because now they feel horrible because they've been indoors, lockdown, feeling sick, and then they overshoot the mark.
I think there's one thing that I actually want to get Wayne's opinion on there, and it's something that Josh has mentioned. It's that people are wanting to do X amount of effort and expecting this reward at the end of the day, right? And as in your personal experience as a coach, how many people have you encountered or have you come across that sort of just naturally don't have the ability, to actually be at the top, top of the cream, but they're giving it their all, but it's that reward is not going to be there at the end of the day for them, unfortunately. When is it that you have to be honest with yourself and say, right, I need to cut my losses here, maybe look at coaching, maybe look at spending my time in a better way that would benefit me later on in life, as opposed to giving this everything that I've got right now.
Yeah, look, I think the point that we're getting to is that everybody's priorities are different, and one of the biggest mistakes is when I judge you on my values and my priorities in life when it's not mine, it's your life.
Exactly.
And we talk about quick to ripen, quick to rot, and if you're expecting results really quickly without doing the hard work, you want to look like an athlete, but you want to take a shortcut in other ways to accelerate those results. If you ripen really quickly, you will rot. And in regards to, your technique in your squat's not great, but you want a 200 kg squat. At some stage, you will blow your back out.
Exactly.
Or if you're taking products to accelerate that an athlete wouldn't do because you're trying to look like an athlete, at some stage something will break. So we say trust the process, and I think that's really important, is to make sure that you have a process. And the point that was also raised in your article is around consistency, and I think that trumps everything. You talk about the goals and big goals. I think that sometimes we set, until I'm a millionaire, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So does that mean I'm miserable until I'm a millionaire?
Yeah.
But progress is happiness. And I've heard that expression said before. So we set small goals and smash them and be happy with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes an athlete will be, but, and I say, don't but. Because if you say, I'm really happy with this, but cancels what you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So-
like nulls it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just
Celebrate
about
the
having
small
those small goals, and we
Yeah.
do those, and it can be in every training session, and it's very hard for an athlete to pull back. So sometimes our job is to turn around or to any client and just say, listen, today we're doing a stretch routine. Because I can just see there's fatigue factors.
Yeah.
And if I can pass on one piece of information or to everybody that's training out there, it would be that the main mistake, two main mistakes I think that common training make when people go into the gyms and stuff would be, firstly, we start overreaching, and that is 2, 3, 4 weeks getting great results, and you think by doing exactly the same thing that will continue, but suddenly you wonder why you're falling off. And the second thing is your nervous system learns very quickly and gets bored very quickly. So if you want to do the same bench press for the next 6 months, understand your nervous system's bored. If you can change it up, it can even be from a bench to wrapping a towel around the bench, and suddenly even the grip being different, is recruitment pattern is different to your nervous system. And so don't let your nervous system get bored. Change things up every 3 weeks or so.
Challenge yourself in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also stimulating going there and trying new things,
I think one of the things to just chime in as well, it's one of what our ambassadors, Ayrton Sweeney, a swimmer, mentioned to me a few weeks back, is about celebrating the small successes. So celebrate that you trained that day. Don't worry if it was your PB, your best, your worst, the fact that you trained.
Just got up there.
Because if you measure success on the end goal of winning a goal, or of becoming a millionaire, or getting a certain car, that whole performance at all costs thing is going to burn you out. I think the whole message is just celebrate each success, each part of the journey, and I think what you guys are saying kind of ties in well to that. Joshua's article is going to be available on the Biogen website if it isn't already.
Yeah.
And maybe just in closing, guys, one more closing statement around performance at all costs. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. We're going to have to unpack it a bit more because we clearly don't have enough time, and maybe we'll have another one of these sessions in the near future. But for the moment, maybe just a comment from each of you before we finish up.
Yeah, I think I would tie it up and just say, the moment you can identify what's your most important factor in your life, your primary, then obviously what's second to that, which is as important, but you will never let it go above what your primary is and what your last factor is. And wherever that is in your life, because the kids might be out of the house, so they technically aren't your primary anymore. Once you can create that identification, which you'll see what we wrote up in the article, I think achieving the small goals actually becomes far more realistic, and you actually start achieving goals. Whereas a lot of times people are achieving goals that they actually never planned for, that they never actually accounted for, and they never really were able to achieve in the first place. I think because they didn't actually map out where they are and what can get where, then they can achieve those small goals, because I couldn't agree more with Wayne on that. On those small goals are actually what get us to the big goals. So yeah, I'd say identify, and then you can start micromanaging those goals and those small goals to actually achieve, and then you're practicing small wins. And small wins always lead to the big wins.
Yeah.
Really? You want to go?
Well, yeah, I think for me at least it's just, I call it the be your best checklist. So every day is literally just ticking off things one day at a time, whether it's, did I eat 4 meals? Of those 4 meals, how many of them were relatively clean, It's not about being excessive in either way or extreme. It's about living a life that's sustainable. And I think that's something that we didn't mention enough.
Yeah.
Sustainability of it all, right?
100%.
So yeah, it's literally just being sustainable, being honest with yourself, honesty enough to sit yourself down and say, this is what matters to me as an individual. It's not about what anyone thinks about me, it's what matters to me. And will I be able to say at the end of the day, look into the mirror, there's a poem, actually, it's Man in the Mirror, and it's about making that man proud, right?
Yeah.
And if you can do that every day, look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, you've done a great job today, then every day is a great day, right? It's ticking those boxes.
100%.
That's all performance at all costs is really.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is that we focus so much on the time that we train, and it can be a quality hour or maybe 2 hours, but these 22 other hours you can either enhance or destroy that product. And I think when we're talking performance at all costs, it's all relative. If you're a very successful business person, the training can really enhance your business, but it can also be very damaging to your business if you're turning up and you're fatigued and your brain isn't working properly, and vice versa. So influencing the time that you're not training is really important. So the things I say to any strength and conditioning coach is to try and influence the time you don't see your clients, and that would be talking to them around their sleep patterns and the things that help them to be better and recover better. So the harder you train, the harder you must recover. You can thrash a Toyota Corolla and it doesn't go into the pits, but you're driving a Formula One hard, it's got to spend time in the pits. And we treat cars and horses better than we treat human beings as far as recovery. And I think people need to understand that as well and spend time in a swimming pool, etc. I just think it's those little things that we need to focus on to get the small gains and be happy with that as well. And define what makes you happy. That's really important.
Yeah, I think it is important to enjoy your training if we speak about the physical aspect. Talking about balance, I mentioned before, I've got 2 little boys, got a wife, family. Rudy will appreciate that as well. Josh, what is your advice to people and your own clients in terms of maintaining that balance? I think we've touched on a lot of things. How do you juggle that? I mean, for me, I've noticed that if I train too hard and I'm working hard and I'm trying to be a good dad and a good husband, something eventually gives. I'll just get blown out. I will be totally either stressed out, or at some point, or your immune system just crashes because you're trying to just win at everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you're trying to apply it at the same intensity, and they can't all take the same intensity because they all have their own different application. Like a newborn disrupts your sleeping patterns. So back to what Wayne was implying, and what we always know is, recovery is key. So it doesn't mean you can't train when you've got a newborn. It just means now be realistic with your goal. Scale that back down. Understand that you're going to have broken sleep. Understand that a 10-minute walk might be your training session. That might be it, because you had 3 hours and it was literally just broken. So I think where it comes down to, and the advice I'd give people when it comes to that at home, is understand that they're not always going to be the same. They're not supposed to be the same, and they never will be the same. You can never approach all 3 at the same intensity. It is impossible. And that's not a challenge. I'm not trying to challenge anyone, because everyone tries to do it daily and everyone fails miserably. So it's going, just identify the phase and the chapter that you are in your life. If you are getting paid, like I addressed that, if you're getting paid to be the athlete, that is your career. So training is not training for you, it's your job. You're checking in, you're clocking in. Your family becomes second to your job. So in training, you find active recovery work. I'm sure you do with a lot of athletes. You find more playful things for pro athletes. Now for Joes, family and job come first, because one provides and helps the other, right? Training then helps them help their own ecosystem. And remember, the ecosystem is supposed to work for the good of one big bubble of life. And that's something that we focus on the most. So identifying it, I think addressing it accordingly, and understanding that you're going to have to microdose and micromanage as you go along is the biggest secret there.
Rudy, balance for you, how does that look?
Look, I think the transition from going, 21-year-old Rudy wanted to get on stage and didn't fully understand what that meant and what came with that. But I gave it everything, and I done well for 4 years. Then got blessed with my beautiful little girl, and 26-year-old Rudy is completely different. It's that list of priorities and where I thought I'd be in life. It's like you say, that it's ever changing. It's a different. What you might prioritize today is completely different to what you'd prioritize tomorrow. Essentially, we discussed this whole COVID thing, and at the time I was prepping for a Biogen shoot, and Tuesday was locked on. The Thursday our shoot was scheduled for, and I was like in incredible shape, so I thought, and I wanted to do the shoot. Kept training every day throughout COVID, trained at home, gave it everything. expecting lockdown to be lowered and we could go ahead as life as usual. That didn't happen. Waited X amount of months, gyms finally opened up, get back into the gym, tear my pec, felt amazing, strong at the end of my session, boom, chest gone, and that really put things in perspective for me. It's, it's not all about trying to lift heavy or look a certain way. It's about understanding where you are in life and being patient with it. It's a journey. It's identifying what you want to excel in and focusing on that, like Josh has said over and over again. It's prioritizing things.
Yeah.
You can't give everything 110%. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just for me, that's the key factors that I'm going to take away from this.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what Josh has said with the strategy implementation of it and sort of prioritizing those 3 tiers in your article that you mentioned. That really will help a lot of people out there struggling to find that balance again. I mean, you know yourself as well with your heart condition and all of that. We haven't touched on it yet, but we will definitely unpack that whole thing. But there's so much to be discussed around this topic that we'll definitely have to follow this up.
No, definitely. I was actually just going to say, I wanted to jump back onto Tails to ask you a question about the psychology. You've been on the cover of a magazine, you've stepped on stage. There's so much more we could talk about this, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to have to do another session. What I would like to do is just thank you all for joining us and contributing, because I think there's a wealth of experience and passion here as well. Maybe just quickly, if we've got a few seconds left, give us a quick plug of websites, Instagram handle, where can people find you, ask you more questions. You guys go for it.
Yeah, on Facebook and Instagram, WT Human Performance. Welcome to send me some messages and connect.
Both Performance Purist on Facebook and Instagram, and Joshua_105.
And Rudy_the unit. Instagram, that's me. But
it should be Rudy the Peck.
Rudy the Peck, yeah, no, but
one peck Rudy.
Also, just in that regard, Biogen SA guys, please do. If you have anything you want to add to this, please do so. We're happy to always take in our audience into consideration in planning these discussions. So add your input. Let us know what you think of it all.
Cool.
I just wanted to say, I think one of the key things at the end of the day is you have to be honest with yourself. And when you're asking yourself questions, don't just fluff around it as well. And we always say, if you're going to have a trust in your life, you need to trust yourself first. If you say you're going to do something and you break that trust, then it's a vicious cycle for yourself. So set your alarm. If you snooze it, it's the first thing you've broken trust to start the day. And I think, the people that are successful that I know in athletes and business, they're early risers. They get up and they make things happen as well, regardless of what you're trying to produce performance.
Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate your time. I hope everybody watching has enjoyed this. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do stay tuned to Biogen SA and all our platforms for more information and more of these sessions going forward. Thanks a lot, guys, and be your best.
Be your best.
Cheers.